Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Saturday from wherever you are watching. And welcome to Legalbytes once again. Thanks for joining. I see that there are some people already in the chat. I love seeing that when we start a live stream right away. Yeah, welcome to a kind of an impromptu live stream, but this is something that just happened. And I figured it was a topic that I wanted to kind of jump on because it's such a salient topic and a lot of people are talking about it right now, and it has a lot to do with the law and liability and all that kind of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I have with me Kurt at Uncivil Law. Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So just now I was like, as of like an hour ago, we were both on Kurt's channel talking about the Texas
It
abortion
wasn't even
law.
that long, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, not even an hour, right? So now we're here talking about this topic, and so yeah, it's an uncivil legal bites day.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so let's get into the Alec Baldwin situation. So I'm sure that everybody that's watching probably knows, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, Alec Baldwin was in the middle of shooting uh, a movie called Rust, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Western, and they were filming on location, I think, in New Mexico, I believe. And apparently he had a firearm that he supposedly thought was unloaded, but I guess was loaded. And now, as a result of the gun going off, I guess it was Alec Baldwin that had the gun, and it went off. And now the cinematographer has unfortunately passed away, and the director is injured in the hospital, maybe out of the hospital at this point. But yeah, so there are a lot of questions, not just factual questions, but also obviously a lot of people have a lot of questions also about the liability aspect here, like who can be held responsible? Can Alec Baldwin be held responsible, civilly responsible, criminally responsible? All kinds of questions that I'm sure people have. I've seen a number of them on Twitter about gun safety and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very happy to talk about this, and I'm really happy that I have someone like Uncivil Law with me, because I know you know a lot about guns too. So this should be a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk about it. I mean, what are your impressions?
Well, here's the facts as I currently understand them, and feel free to correct me.
Mhm.
So, a couple hours before this incident occurred, a bunch of the staff walked off on set because they had concerns about safety. So there seems to have been some safety, concern that was happening. Also, as I understand it, the armorer may not have been on set at the time. The person who's with safety with the guns, and that may have not been there. As I understand it, Alec Baldwin was told by an assistant director the gun was a cold gun when he picked it up. And he picked it up, and why he aimed this gun at these people and pulled the trigger is still yet unclear from the factual situation I understood. I mean, one would think it can't be for the purposes of the film because, why would you be aiming at those people for the purposes of the film? But maybe,
Unless it was like I'm envisioning like a close up from the perspective of the person being shot.
yeah,
You know how
maybe,
you aim it at the camera because it's that's you're seeing it from that vantage point. So
yeah,
uh,
maybe something like that. But it's unclear what happened there.
thanks, Andy. Thanks for the super chat, but oh, Andy.
Yeah.
Anyway, continuing.
So it's also unclear exactly what the people were struck with. It appears to have been a live round because it went through somebody and hit somebody else in the shoulder. So I don't
That
think a
was
blank can do that.
that was another question that I had. So it was he pulled the trigger just once, right?
Yes. So it
Okay,
appears
so
to have gone
it
through
didn't
him
go
and
off.
struck someone else.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
would have had to have been a live round, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's also my understanding that by policy, live rounds are not allowed anywhere on set. So how the live round got into the gun is going to be a massive point of inquiry. for law enforcement as they try to figure this out. So we can look at this from both a civil perspective and a criminal perspective. But
Yeah.
I've been speaking for a little while now, so why don't you say something, Alita?
It's good. You've been doing a great job of sort of laying this sort of foundation. I mean, because and film sets I think are very interesting to me because um, they've kind of historically been sort of a dangerous place to be. We don't necessarily think about it until something like this happens, and then you look up an article of like how many deaths on set happen, and then you realize that it actually is relatively too common, at least. I first was introduced to the subject when I somehow came across the Twilight Zone movie, the whole trial that happened where Landis was tried and then eventually acquitted for the deaths on set that happened because of a helicopter crash. So I made a whole video on it, like actually almost exactly a year ago, and I found the whole thing so interesting. But safety on sets I think has gotten much better, especially since the days of the Twilight Zone movie.
Mm-hmm.
But these accidents still happen. I remember Blade Runner. I think there was like a stuntman that died on set then, and I mean there was one as recently as earlier this year that apparently in an Indian movie I was reading some crew member was electrocuted. So these things unfortunately happen. So, but as to this specific issue, so we can look at liability from multiple perspectives. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are talking about Alec Baldwin because that's kind of the most obvious person to start with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got the person that actually pulled the trigger, and he also, of course, he's kind of a easy fodder for this kind of discussion too, because of the statements that he's made about guns and the police and stuff like that. I'm sure you've seen the tweets getting retweeted now from like 2017 or something
but
like
watch
that.
him double down. Watch him come out with a statement. This is why we need even more gun control. I watch him double down on it.
Yeah. Oh, and people are also mentioning in the chat about The Crow. Yeah, Brandon Lee, of course. That was like one of the most famous ones. So starting with he's actually not the only one that would have to potentially worry about liability, right?
There's a couple
because
people in this chain who have liability. The assistant director has potential liability because he apparently told him it was safe. The armorer has some potential liability because they prep the guns. And because live rounds are not allowed on set, that raises a whole nother set of possibilities that someone unknown deliberately put a live round in the gun with the intention of it potentially harming someone. So someone somewhere might be guilty of murder. If that's true. If you deliberately load the gun, someone somewhere might be guilty of murder. So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. So I think personally for me, we can pull up the actual criminal law statutes for New Mexico.
Sure.
But I think we were kind of discussing this a little bit backstage, but my first impression is that most likely there probably most likely is not any criminal liability because you have an issue with intent, right? Because
I mean for Baldwin, yes. If
right,
we want to
exactly.
go person by person. Yeah, we have to go person by person on the
We really do. Yeah.
So let's talk about Baldwin first.
Yes. Yeah, let's do it. He's in the title, right? After all. So let's see here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay. So all right, let me share my screen.
Sure.
And also let's get the super chat. Thank you, Manny Fabani, for the super chat. I really liked your Twilight Zone deaths on set video. You should do more historic trial stuff. You're super good at it. Thank you. I would love to do more historic trial stuff. That was actually a really fun. It was a lot of work because there was a lot to really dig into and to edit with that. But it was actually a really, really fascinating story to get into, and it was it turned out to be. I was very proud of that video. So thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So okay, let me get back to sharing the screen here. Okay. All right. Oh, do it like this. Okay. Uh, New Mexico statutes, criminal offenses. All right, so we're talking about manslaughter here. So we'll start with like the lowest one, right? Because
Sure.
I don't know that we could even get to murder, because you would have to show that there's some sort of an intent to kill someone or total reckless disregard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we could get there, but let's start with manslaughter, right? So manslaughter is the unlawful killing of a human being without malice. Voluntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed upon a sudden quarrel or in the heat of passion. We don't have
No.
that here. I mean, unless there was
Unless
some
unless
sort
there are
of
facts unknown. Right?
outburst.
So all our analysis is necessarily based on the facts as we currently understand them. Let's
Yeah.
just put that out there.
Yeah.
So at the moment, no.
Yeah. So based on the facts that we do have, it doesn't look like there was some sort of a passionate argument that came right before this incident, right? So I would say probably no. Whoever commits voluntary manslaughter. Okay, so we don't even need to get into that. So A is we don't have that. B, involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to felony, or in the commission of a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution and circumspection. So I think,
I'm not feeling it.
yeah, commission of a lawful act, because it's
The act itself isn't unlawful.
yeah, right. It's not unlawful to just to shoot a gun on a film set, right?
No.
So
I mean,
so
that
yeah,
happens
so,
all the time.
right, exactly. So it's a lawful act. Is it one which might produce death in an unlawful manner? Did he do it in an unlawful manner? Is another question.
It seems based on the facts, I'd have to say no, because he was told that it was. So the best you could hope for would be some sort of like criminal negligence, like he did not exert due care in the firearm. You know, if he had just picked it up
Yeah.
on his own and pulled the trigger, you
Yeah.
might get some to criminal negligence, and that
Yeah.
might get you there. But the problem is, it appears he was explicitly told it was a cold gun. So
Right.
I don't think you can get even to like criminal negligence. So I don't see
Right.
the unlawful manner. And
Right.
the same problem with
So
due causation and circumspection.
yes.
Exactly. If he just picked up the gun and pulled the trigger, that would be that. But no, I'm not getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, because I think the fact that he had just been told that it was a cold gun, and that he also apparently said, like, right after the incident, he was like, being taken away or something, or not being taken away, but like leaving the incident, that he was saying that in all of his years he's never been handed a hot gun before, and so I mean it's being his experience in the film industry could possibly cut both ways. I think it could either, like you were saying that the Viva and Barnes were saying on Tim Pool yesterday, that that apparently they're of the opinion that his level of experience in the film industry means that he should know how to handle a gun, and he should know when it feels different or something along those lines. But I think on the other hand, though, it could cut the other way, that you could say that he has enough experience to know that he can trust
Rely
a
on
person,
people,
the
yeah.
armorer, right? Like you kind of, to a certain extent, that's kind of what has to happen with regard to safety on set for just about anything, not just a gun, but also like, electrocution, or, somebody flying a helicopter, or, like you really hope that everybody that's there is doing their job and doing it right. So, I mean, did he have, would it have been wise of him to,
is it reasonable for him to rely
yeah,
on that statement? And because he's been in situations where presumably he's relied on other statements,
yeah,
then you would have to conclude it would be reasonable for him to rely on that representation.
Right.
The gun
Right.
appeared to be in a place where it suggests, I don't quite understand, it was on some kind of card or something, but apparently wherever the gun was indicated to the assistant director it was a cold gun. So I think he was drawing the conclusion based on where the gun was at the start, that it was cold. But either way,
Yeah.
he made that representation.
Right.
And because he's like, well, the gun can't be there unless the armorer cleared
Yeah.
it, so it must be safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
that's...
I want to address this question. What is a hot prop gun? So we're talking about a prop gun is a gun that's used on set as a prop in a movie. A hot gun, or a hot prop gun, is one that has live rounds in it. A cold gun means that it has blanks, right?
Or yeah, well, I don't know if you necessarily
or
call
maybe
that
not
cold.
necessarily blanks, but
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily call that cold, but yeah, it's in a safe condition.
yeah.
At
Okay.
least unloaded would get you there.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we don't, it looks like, based on assuming that Justia is a proper place, this is accurate New Mexico law. I'm doing this research pretty quickly on the fly here. So,
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily vouching for it, but assuming that this is correct, it looks like we don't have manslaughter. So we wouldn't have anything above that, right? We wouldn't have,
No, I don't even know that we can get to the negligent mens rea. Even that's, as I said, is hard, and you're going to
right.
need some, intentional, reckless, uh, no intentional, knowing, reckless, or negligent are your options. I'm like, I can't even get to negligence, so I'm having a tough time, obviously, getting above
Yeah.
that. So I think
Yeah.
murder's out of the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So let me get this other super chat here that came
The
up.
the
We've got
best that the best you could hope for is if the person he was aiming the gun at didn't know it was happening, then I guess that would get you to assault, which might be an unlawful manner. So that's his fact that we don't have, that he was aiming at someone who didn't expect it. So
yeah.
if you have that, then maybe you get there from manslaughter. But
Yeah.
short of that, we don't have it.
Right. So, Forever Keeper, thank you so much for your super chat. Do you think there's any clause built into actors' contracts to cover circumstances like this one? So that's another thing, is that I don't know personally what kind of liability waivers they might have for coming on set for any
Yeah,
film, but I would imagine that they might have something for some kind of injury for yeah,
I'm
something.
sure. But it's very important to make clear that those waivers, no matter how clever they are, do not impact criminal liability, which was our discussion.
Right.
So I don't
Right.
care
So
what waiver it says in indemnifying provision. I don't care what it says. Yeah,
yes.
that's not going to impact the criminal liability analysis. I guarantee you.
Yeah. So that would impact civil liability, meaning how much someone would have to pay
Yeah.
pay in a civil lawsuit for a wrongful death or for a personal injury case. So for the cinematographer, excuse me, it would be a wrongful death case, and then for the director, so far it looks like he's probably going to make a recovery. That would be a personal injury case.
Yeah. So let's talk about the civil liability aspects with
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's first of all go to even in basic civil liability aspects. So what are we going for? Again, we could go for assault as a civil tort, but this depends a lot on the consent elements. A battery, again, consent elements. Was this something that they knew was going to happen? Wrongful death, again, you have to have some sort of negligent lack of care. So even in a civil action, it seems problematic. But there is one other idea. It appears that he is an executive producer for the production company.
Yeah.
So now you can get the idea of, okay, because he's an executive producer, he's at least partially or fully responsible for the armorer and what they do, right? He's responsible for hiring them, for monitoring them, for disciplining them, so forth and so on. Would that attach as a personal liability? It depends on the contracts. Does it go to the liability for the production company? Yes. So I think the production company as a whole might have some civil liability. But I'm going to
Yes.
assume the contracts are such that he doesn't personally, based on the
Probably.
facts as we currently understand them.
Yes. Yeah, and obviously that can change because this just happened yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
we
there's
don't
so
have all
much
the information
information.
yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the New Mexico police are still investigating and trying to figure out exactly what happened. So yeah, so the production company may have some civil liability. He may or may not have some civil liability in this situation. It could also be that the assistant director, the armorer, if they were there or they were not there, they were supposed to be there. There's a whole chain of people that could potentially be brought into some sort of a civil claim.
Yeah.
But also another question is, what if everyone on set did everything that they were supposed to do and there was an issue with the firearm? That's also a possibility because we have that little information right now about the incident.
John O'Brien is saying manslaughter literally is designed to avoid mens rea. Can we pull up the statute again just to help clarify this point? Because I think it's a point worth
Sure.
clarifying.
Sure.
Okay, so we have these elements. So manslaughter is the unlawful killing of a human being without malice. Then it goes on to define that in two parts. Voluntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed upon a sudden quarrel or in the heat of passion. So that's still well. First of all, if you view that as not mens rea, then fair enough. But it still requires the sudden quarrel or heat of passion, which, to our
Right.
understanding, is not factually there. So if you don't
Right.
view that as mens rea, fair enough. But we don't
Hmm.
have the factual elements. Involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act. Now, there you do have a mens rea implicitly because the unlawful act itself has mens rea requirements. So that's part of the analysis there about like negligence and stuff in the unlawful act. Or in
Right.
the commission of a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner. Again, we're talking about lawful versus unlawful acts. So
Yeah.
implicitly, we're talking about mens rea there, or without
Yeah.
due caution and circumspection, which is basically a negligence. It's basically negligence, right? Due caution and circumspection is a it's talking about negligence. You know, you didn't exert the due care. You lacked your duty of care. That's negligence. So I think mens rea is relevant to the analysis for the reasons I stated, and hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was good. So, other than that, so we could go through the elements of negligence too, to kind of touch on the civil liability
Yeah, duty, breach of
aspect.
duty, causation, and damages.
Yeah. So the person in question, so Alec Baldwin in this case, did he have a duty
Yes,
of reasonable care? Yes, of
yes.
course. Did he breach that duty?
That's the problem, right? Because apparently he was informed by the assistant director who is in a position. I mean, the director he's the producer, so he has overall control. But the director is the person who has control at that particular moment, right? That's his role. So he's informed
Right.
by someone and he has his ability to rely on that. So did he breach his duty by relying on that? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So if he did, you have causation and damages, but you're having a problem with breach of duty, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely think so. I think that there's a lot here that has to do with his mental state that does not get him this liability that I think maybe some people just on a personal satisfaction level would like to see.
Yeah. John O'Brien
Just for the
says,
irony of it.
John O'Brien says, because they're dead. Okay, because they're dead, it goes to damages. It goes to the harm. So it goes to element
Yeah.
four. So
Yeah.
yes, so you've got damages, but you still have the other three parts of the analysis. A
Right.
trigger was pulled. Yes, that's an action that's performed. So he again that goes to breach of duty. Did he
Yeah.
breach his duty by pulling the trigger? To get to that, you have to go to his mental. You have to go to what duty is
Right.
applicable to him, and it seems based on the analysis, at least at first blush, although, I'm sure it will be contested at some point, but on first blush,
Yeah.
it seems no, in my
Yeah.
best opinion.
And to clarify, so when we talk about the elements of any claim, in this case negligence, that's right in this particular instance right now before we move on to another one,
Sure.
we're talking about, four basic elements. Each and every one of those has to be met in order for there to be civil liability for the claim of negligence. So just because you have somebody that died doesn't necessarily mean that someone else is legally responsible for that. So maybe morally responsible. I mean, he may have nightmares for years to come as a result of this incident. It may weigh very, very heavily on him, and maybe not. Who knows? I don't know him personally, so I have no idea what kind of person he is. But as far as the law is concerned, all of those four elements need to be met. And so, in terms of whether or not he breached the duty of reasonable care handling a firearm, is probably something that a plaintiff suing him, so maybe the family members of the cinematographer, that they would have a very hard time meeting because there were so many people there that can vouch for the fact that he was told that it was a cold gun right
Yeah.
before they handed it to him.
Yeah.
So
So
I
yeah,
hope
that's
that clarifies.
basically all I have to say about Alec Baldwin with respect to criminal and civil
So
liability.
And then this part right here, operating a dangerous instrumentality gives a heightened duty. Think of train cases carrying volatile cargo.
Yeah.
So there are certain products and certain animals, for example, that can have oh God, what's the word for it? For some reason, the Latin term is escaping me. But basically, like automatic liability. It doesn't matter what
Per
your mental
se.
state is. Yes, per se, negligence per se. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you have
So
some instances.
if you keep a tiger in your yard
Exactly.
and the tiger escapes, it doesn't matter how careful you were. The
Right.
tiger is a tiger, so it sucks to be you. You know, if the
Yes.
tiger eats someone, but I had cages and snipers and whatever. As well, sucks to be you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that is called negligence per se. And there are some, I think that there are some like toxic chemicals, for example,
I have no doubt.
radioactive material or something that also would fall into that category. But a firearm does not fall into that category, because otherwise, if it did, then there would be a whole heck of a
Yeah,
lot more
if
people.
it implied negligence per se, that would imply that every time someone is shot with a gun, there must be
Yes.
criminal liability.
Yes.
And that doesn't seem to flow from
Right.
this law.
Right. Right. And so and yeah. Right. Exactly.
Whereas every
So
time the tiger gets loose, there is criminal liability. So yeah, that's the difference there.
yes, because it's incredibly uncommon. Most people do not have a tiger, and that's definitely not
Unless you're in
recommended
Texas,
to
which
have
apparently
one.
has more tigers than the rest of the world.
Texas? Oh, I
Apparently,
was thinking of
appar-
Tiger King.
well, yeah, well,
in
Tiger King is in
Oklahoma.
Texas. I thought he was in Texas, but yeah, either way, like apparently Texas has more tigers than the rest of the world because we allow tigers to be kept as pets or something.
Oh
So
wow.
okay,
Oh
that's a
boy.
thing.
Oh man. Oh, those poor tigers. Well, yes, but that is an example of where you would have heightened. Another example of where somebody might have heightened, responsibility in handling something would be where somebody is a professional in a
Yeah,
certain area. So where somebody
yeah.
has extensive training. So
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 when we get to the
someone
armor, we'll have a different discussion.
exactly. So with
Yeah.
that, let's talk about the armor.
Well, I think first we have to go through the AD first.
The what?
The assistant director who told
Okay.
him the gun was cold.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right. So, as to criminal liability, is he criminal? Well, it depends why he was saying the things he did, and I don't think we have enough information to know. It appears that this was on some sort of cart that appeared to disclose it. So, I don't know if that's industry practice. I don't know if that's normal. I don't know the degree to which he can rely on that. I don't know the degree to which he, as his job function, is supposed to double check on that or something.
Right.
I don't have sufficient information at this time. If I had to guess, then I would probably guess that for him there's no criminal liability, because I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that he's able to rely on this based on the facts. But that could change rapidly if we learn something. But
Right.
okay.
Right.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same on the civil analysis. It'd be like, why was he drawing the conclusions he was? Was it reasonable for him to draw those conclusions? Because it was
Right.
there, because it was in this status, blah, blah, blah. Could he rely on that in a reasonable way? Is that consistent with industry practice, and so forth and so on? So the assistant director's analysis is slightly more muddled because we don't, I think, have enough information.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the industry standards can go a long way for a role like that. For
Yeah.
like what other kinds of checks should they have done ahead of time, if any?
Now, Carla Vegas points out, and this is a good point, that half the crew quit the day before. So they quit the night before. Or I was hours before. It's a little unclear if it was the first thing that morning or the previous night based on the articles I've read, but it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
So half the staff, walked off the set specifically because of safety concerns. And it doesn't appear like there was an armor on set at the time, which also raises negligence problems for the production company as a whole.
Right. Right. And
So,
I would
yeah.
say maybe also the assistant director also.
Well, again, it depends. Well, probably not for the assistant director, because they were not responsible for having that person on set. That's more a production problem
You
than
think
the
so?
director's problem. I think so. Because
Yeah.
it's like
Also,
it's not like an actor
another
or something. So probably.
yeah. I mean, another point is that the director, Jeff Souza, right? Jeff is his first name.
Yeah.
So he could also be held responsible for the death of the cinematographer. So even though he got injured here, he's a victim of the incident. He also could
Oh,
be
sure. Sure.
because he's the one that's overseeing the whole set, and so he can potentially, you know, a
Yeah.
director, we have seen that a director can face potential
Yeah.
criminal
So
liability.
the fact that this walkout happened specifically on safety that day or the day before could be used and argued by a lawyer to say, well, you said a heightened reason that, you know, maybe you just can't, maybe this is industry practice, but you had a heightened reason
Yeah.
to be concerned, especially
Right.
to the degree that anyone made any representations to the staff to get them back working. Like, if
Yeah.
I'm assuming they just didn't come back to the job because they changed their mind a couple hours later, I'm going to go out and assume that someone said, you know, this is safety, we have these measures, blah blah blah, everything is
Yeah.
well, right? And so there might be problems there because now you're like saying this affirmative thing, and like mere hours later it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Although that does
Yeah.
suggest maybe someone was
That's
trying to make a point to, so it might suggest intentional act by someone else, but that's a whole other
oh
problem.
that would
Yeah.
be that would be really
Yeah, yeah.
really bad.
One of the staff purposely loaded the gun because they were so frustrated that they wanted to make the point of how dangerous the set is. I
So
mean, it's
that
yeah. Which
that would
incidentally,
be
murder,
yes.
murder. That would be
Yeah.
what we call reckless disregard.
Yes,
That's
for the safety
reckless.
of others,
Yeah,
or the
you
life or
have
death of
reckless
another.
disregard of the safety of others. You have
Yeah.
purposely loaded this thing with the knowledge that it might be used to point at someone. That's reckless disregard, and potentially even intent. At a minimum, it's reckless disregard, and maybe it's like you really wanted that to happen. So now we're up to a whole another status of intentionality.
Yeah.
Super fun. So either way, we're having massive problems on criminal liability. If someone loaded
Yeah.
that gun with a bullet on purpose, someone has a massive criminal liability exposure.
Yes. Yes. So let me see if I can, let's just for funsies, let's look up homicide. Let's look up murder.
Yeah,
Uh
sure.
all right.
It's murder.
All right. Let's see. I think it's yep. Okay.
Dickie points out that there's NDAs, but it's irrelevant to criminal charges. So NDAs
Right.
will not save you in a criminal case.
Right. That would just be a non-disclosure agreement.
That's a non-disclosure agreement. That's a contract. Contract can't
Yeah.
save you in a criminal case. That's a no-go.
Yeah.
You have a super
So
chat if you want to read it.
okay, sure. All right, John O'Brien, thank you for your super chat. He said, bad explanation of negligence per se. Restatement actor is negligent per se if she violates a statute that is designed to protect against the type of accident or harm caused by her conduct. So yeah, usually there's going to be some kind of a statute that specifically says
Yeah.
what kind of things are going to fall under negligence per se.
Yeah.
But
So this is fair. If there's a specific statute that they violated, then you
Yeah.
might be very well on your way of negligence per se. But
Yeah.
we're just unaware of anyone that specifically applies.
to firearms. Yeah.
Yeah, to this situation. Well, it would have to be a little bit more specific than that. It would probably have to be something specific with respect to movies and movie situations, I would think. But
Yeah.
either way, we don't know the statute exists, so we can't analyze it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unless we did a quick Google search, but
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Well,
But
no,
the
because now
likelihood of,
our search is too broad because we don't know exactly know what we're looking for.
yeah, I know.
We don't- yeah.
You guys want to sit with us while we do hours of legal
you
research?
want
can
to
find
sit
out-
with us? You want to sit with us as we bill you some time?
You can see what it's really like to be a lawyer, trying to find the answer.
Yeah.
This is thrilling stuff. So, here's another super chat. Andy, thanks for your super chat. Directors don't typically worry about the logistics around the set. Maybe an AD or producer is actually responsible.
So we were talking about the assistant director. So if we said director, we meant assistant director. It was the assistant director who told Baldwin. So
Although,
Yeah.
but I did say that a director can face criminal liability, which we
Yes.
know that because of John Landis.
sure,
You know, he faced trial along.
everyone
with,
can face
several
criminal
other guys.
liability. Well, I think we got that clear. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but for him, it was literally because it was, the question was, can the person that's supposed to be in charge of the whole set, the director, can they be held criminally liable for safety standards that are not necessarily safety standards, but like for wrongful deaths on the set that's like under their watch. Basically, so I saw some of the interviews that a lot of directors had after he was charged, just talking about how they were like, holy crap, like this could totally affect me moving forward. So, yeah. So, and then one more super chat. Hello, Mandalore Wise 01. Thank you for your super chat. Hey, you again. Just preliminarily, do you guys have mostly the same view that Viva and Barnes shared yesterday on Timcast IRL? So I just full disclosure, I have not seen their discussion on Timcast IRL, but I do know what Uncivil told me about.
Yeah.
Briefly, some of the stuff that they were talking
I saw about like the first 10 minutes of the discussion, and based on what I understand them to be saying, I'd have to respectfully disagree. They were saying things like, because he's been an actor for so long, he should know this gun is something's up with the gun. Because of his industry experience, he should know something's wrong. And I think it kind of goes the other way in a lot of respects, because his industry experience is like he can rely on these people. And I don't think he would necessarily be able to tell just by handling the gun that something's wrong. Right. I mean, it's a real gun. It feels like a real gun. I doubt you could tell the weight difference between like a bullet being in there or not, if you're, unless you're like the most, most familiar person ever with that particular firearm. So I have to respectfully disagree. I think their analysis was much too sharp to find liability for Baldwin. I'm not seeing it at this time. Wouldn't be the first time Barnes and I disagreed, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I would agree with you, because I think that yes, he does have a long history of being in films. I mean, I don't know also how many of those films he shot a firearm in. I know that he has quite a bit, but I mean, out of the number of films that he filmed, how many of them involved him holding, firing, etc. a firearm? I don't know. So that that can also make a difference. That I don't know what kind of experience he actually had outside of filming.
They were ready to convict him, Alita. They were ready to like put him in jail. And I'm like, I'm not so sure about that one, guys.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, like we were saying earlier, is that there also is a lot to be said for his mental state, because you have to have a culpable mental state to be held criminally liable. You have to. So if he this would be an interesting hypothetical, for a bar exam or something.
This does feel like actually, now that you mention it, it does feel a lot like a bar exam question.
It does.
It does feel a lot like a bar exam question.
Where the question is, you have to pick out, mens rea, the criminal intent of the person, because, like usually on the bar exam, you'll get questions that have something to do with like, oh, the person was, sleepwalking, or, oh, the person was temporarily insane or something. I don't know. But it's like, but you literally have someone that is actively shooting the gun, pulling the trigger. They are intending to pull the trigger, but they're not intending to shoot anyone, because they think that it's not a live round. So so anyway, that's I think that would be an interesting hypothetical, and we're living in it.
It feels like a margin question for sure. Yeah.
American Philosophy, thank you so much for your super chat. Do you really want to see what it's like to be a lawyer? So true, you made my day. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm really glad that we made your day. But that is 100%. That's about like 90%, I would say, of what being a lawyer is like. It's just sitting right here at my computer and just trying to find some kind of an answer to something or other, and searching and searching and searching and trying to find the needle in the haystack. And maybe sometimes you find it and you feel like a winner. And then other times you can't. And then you're like, oh, maybe it doesn't exist. But anyway, so that's the director.
We're gonna look at the murder statute when we got interrupted.
Oh God, that's right. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. Okay, so do we have? Okay, is this it, or is that still murder? Okay, so. Murder in the first degree is the killing of one human being by another without lawful justification or excuse by any of the means with which death may be caused. One, by any kind of willful, deliberate, and premeditated killing. So I don't think we have that here, because unless...
Not on the facts, but...
Not on the facts that we have.
Yeah, not on the facts as they currently exist, no.
Right. So we don't have somebody, Alec yeah, if we're talking about Alec Baldwin, right? Like we don't have him saying like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna pretend that it's a cold one, but I'm gonna secretly put a live round in here." We don't have anything that suggests that. Two, in the commission of or attempt to commit any felony. I don't think
No
he was
facts.
committing or yeah, nothing. Number three, by any act greatly dangerous to the lives of others, indicating a depraved mind regardless of human life.
So if someone loaded that gun, you're there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If someone
Yes,
loaded that gun, you're there.
to teach a lesson.
Or for really any reason. I mean, whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter because motives, as we, well, maybe not all well know, motives are irrelevant in a legal
Mm-hmm.
determination. You look to intent, not
Yeah.
motive.
Yeah.
So his motive might have been to cause a scene. His motive might have been to play a joke. His motive might have been, I don't know, nor do I care.
Yeah.
But his intent was to perform an act that was deprived, regardless of human life. So
Yes.
you're there.
Yeah.
You're there. That bullet got in that gun somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
someone somewhere has some serious exposure. I'm not necessarily saying they're
Great
guilty,
mind.
by the way,
Yeah.
but someone has some exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. That there's I guess more questions that would have to be asked to get more facts to determine whether up or down.
Yeah. And nobody
Right.
says, what if they load the wrong round accidentally? Then you're back into a manslaughter analysis. You know,
Yeah.
if because the person who actually loaded it in there, if they did deliberately, you have murder problems. If they didn't do it deliberately, then you're well into your way to some sort of reckless disregard, you know, criminally
Or
negligent disregard. So at that point, you're into an involuntary manslaughter analysis.
yeah, or at the very least, you know, the do it acting without due caution and circumspection,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because the question is, you know, under what circumstances would that accident have occurred, right? Because you could have somebody that accidentally, you know, loaded the wrong round because the box was mislabeled. Then that's not their fault, right? That the box was mislabeled.
If
But
somehow
they
there was a live round in a round of, if somehow there was a
Yes.
live round in a box of blanks, then
Yes.
yes, that would not be criminal negligence.
Right.
Although we might be able to go after the firearm producer who made
Yes.
that box
Yes.
because that's product liability.
Yes, yes. But on the other hand, if that person that was in charge of taking it from the box into the gun, if they just weren't paying attention, then that's the kind of
Yeah.
thing that they would probably get involuntary manslaughter for under these
So
elements.
someone has some criminal exposure because that bullet got in there somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But I don't think it's necessary. Well, on the AD, it's muddled because we don't know enough facts to analyze his civil or criminal liability
yeah.
at this time.
And
But there are possibilities.
here's a question. Why would there be live rounds on a set to begin with?
There shouldn't be. And as I understand
Yeah.
from industry practice, they're never supposed to be in set ever.
Yeah.
That's my
I think
understanding. There's never supposed
that's-
to be live rounds ever. So
That's
good question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my understanding too. I'm, you know, if someone watching this is in the film industry and knows otherwise, please let us know. But yeah, that's my understanding also. I mean, it could just be that, you know, in the process of that gun making its way on set through its processing, I don't know. I don't even know what that process looks like.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a set designer. I could probably reach out to him and ask
yeah.
him. But yeah,
So
that's yeah.
We have one person left in our analysis. So now
Yes.
we've done Baldwin, the assistant director, and the last person in the chain is the prop master / the armorer. They obviously, in my view, they have the biggest exposure because they are responsible for that prop in a very direct way. They're
Yes.
responsible for making sure that prop is okay. They're responsible for making sure it's in the right place. They're responsible for not putting it in a place that marks it safe unless it is. So, you know, take your pick between the armorer and the prop master, but either way, there's a problem here because somehow that gun got with a loaded gun. The fact that happened seems like criminal negligence at minimum.
For the
I
armorer.
think the armorer prop master. So depending on, and again, this might get specifically into the industry and exactly how it's done. So maybe it's the case that the armorer gives it to the prop master and the prop master just puts it where it needs to be. So maybe the prop master isn't have a liability, but one of the two, and maybe both, have some real exposure, I think, on involuntary manslaughter. And of course, civil liability issues. Although
Right.
the civil liability issues may be impacted by the agreements contractually, but who knows?
Yeah.
But there's some
Yeah.
criminal liability exposure for those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my guess is, I mean, realistically, it's probably insurance would be stepping in for all of these individuals for civil liability, because all of these sets are insured.
I don't know. I don't know the degree to which insurance would cover this or not, and I don't know.
I think that that's the case, because I remember when I was researching for the Twilight Zone movie, and one of the ways that the industry changed was that so production companies started to look towards getting insurance, and insurers, if I remember correctly, insurers were saying, yeah, that's fine, we can do this, but you've got to make some changes, and we've got to have, people that we can send on set and have a safety manager and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, so I would not be surprised if with regards to civil liability, insurance would probably step in at some point, at the very least for the production company, but most likely for these various individuals too.
Now, why
The
is it
armorer
that
might also have his own professional liability insurance.
this is a very good point? This is a very solid point. Yeah, so he may be personally insured as well. So very fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just because of the danger of his job, like any single mistake he or she makes, he could have a female armor, obviously. But any mistake that they make, they can face liability, right? Because it's like a super dangerous job.
Yeah.
So.
Now, my last point is I'm super skeptical there'll be criminal charges at all for anybody unless they can prove something. If it was just criminal negligence, I don't see the prosecutor going after them.
Yeah.
So that's the depressing part of the exercise. If someone loaded that gun intentionally, however, and the prosecutor doesn't go after that, I'm going to flip my shit.
Yeah, that would be the kind of situation where a prosecutor really should step in, and there should be a criminal case for murder, really, just on the elements, right? Yeah.
And the only other way for it to get any more bizarre would be if the person who died was the person who loaded the gun, so it was actually a suicide the entire time. That's the only way it gets any more bizarre than it gets now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a strange situation that happens.
Can't murder yourself.
True.
And even you can't prosecute them because they're dead. Yeah, so
can't press charges, right?
Yeah, that's hard. So that's the only way for this to get worse.
Yeah. So then the production company, I mean, obviously you can't have not this kind of criminal liability against the production company.
I don't know. I can state that absolutely. I'm trying to think. You do sometimes have criminal liability. I'm trying to think for companies.
Yeah,
I've seen it happen
that
in
usually
product
usually
safety cases.
Yeah, or like fraud and embezzlement, like that kind of those kind of situations.
Unless you can show a conspiracy. A conspiracy to load the gun by the higher ups of the company. Then maybe. Or if it was an officer acting intentionally, then maybe.
Well,
but yeah, there might be
Alec
something
Baldwin
there.
being an executive producer might do it.
But for this to work, you have to show Alec Baldwin himself personally loaded the gun, at which point he's guilty of murder, and the whole analysis gets shifted radically.
Right. Of course. So,
or maybe it was an old switcheroo of the guns. Like maybe the gun was switched for a different gun. Yeah. So someone came by the cart and palmed the prop gun, which was safe, and put their own gun down, which looks exactly the same.
With like some black leather glove, like just you don't see who it is. They're like behind the box.
A little bit of sleight of hand. Why
not? Yeah.
That's also murder, by the way, just in case we were confused about that.
That would also, that would be the equivalent of putting a live round in there, right?
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Intentionally putting a live round in there.
Yeah, it's intentionally providing someone a loaded gun who doesn't know it's loaded, and we're back to with reckless disregard of human life. Section 1C on that. So no problem. Murder in the first degree without blinking an eye. Fun times.
Yes, exactly.
So it'll be fun to see how this. It'll also be maybe not fun. It'll be interesting to see how this develops. I think it's very unlikely Baldwin has criminal exposure. I think
Hmm.
he might have some civil exposure in so much as he's the executive producer, but I'm sure he has indemnity agreements to protect him against that. So probably doesn't have any actual exposure. But whoever the prop master and armor is the biggest exposure, unless we find someone who did it intentionally, at which point we have a whole new ball game.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. Yes. So, some of the discourse on places like Twitter is very very interesting.
No,
Um,
not on Twitter.
of course, right? Why would anybody have outrageous arguments on Twitter? But I saw an interesting, hypothetical that somebody posted, which I don't think fits this situation. Like when we're talking about a hypothetical, you want it to be factually analogous to the situation in order for it to really apply, right? So that the hypothetical that I saw was that somebody said, imagine that you're at a shooting range. Person A hands person B a firearm and says it's safe. Person B starts aiming it and shooting at people. Who is responsible? So I think that the fact that it's happening at a shooting range makes a difference rather than being on set, because at a shooting range, typically you have live rounds that are coming out of any firearm. It's much more likely that you have live rounds rather than a film
Yeah.
set where people are.
This is correct. This is correct. The concept that the firearm is loaded should be much more a prevalent concept. Although, as the
Yeah.
chat was pointing out, and I can't deny this point, like the fundamental rule of gun safety rule number one, the gun is always loaded.
Yes.
So
Always point down range, right? Never
yeah,
point it at
don't
another
don't point at
person.
anything you don't intend to destroy. Keep your finger off
Right.
the trigger until you're prepared to fire, and so forth and so on.
Right.
Be aware of your
Right.
target and what's behind it. Now we've
Yes.
recited the four basic laws of gun safety. But if you just remember the gun's always loaded, you'll pretty much get there from that.
Yeah.
So
But
I
on
don't
a
know the
film
degree to
set,
which
though,
I don't know the degree to which Baldwin has been advised of the four rules of safety.
well, although I mean, from what I was reading, though, I mean, um, they have extensive. I mean, I don't know what they had on this particular set, but typically whenever there's a firearm involved, they have extensive training sessions that they do with the actors involved, with the crew, et cetera, so that it's handled as safely as possible. Now, whether or not he was paying attention during that, I have no idea. He may have been phoning that part in because he's like, whatever, I've been on set for my whole life and I know what I'm doing. That's totally possible. Because, like, I mean, how many people that have been flying for a while actually pay attention to the emergency information at the beginning, right before takeoff, right? Like,
Yeah.
like other than maybe doing a cursory check for, like, oh yeah, where are the exits again? Are they in front of me? Behind? Okay, cool, we're good.
Which I guarantee, which I do, but I know in the event of emergency, there's no way on God's earth I'm going to remember that. So I don't know why I was checking in the first place.
I mean, well, I just like to think front or back. Which way do I go? That's all. That's all I have to remember. Simple enough. But the difference though with the typical gun safety rules that you have on any firing range, they're a little bit different on set, right? Because obviously you have situations where you are pointing a gun at another person. You are intending for that to be fake, right? Because it's not real. Like it's Hollywood magic land. But you have real movies where guns are used, and you want to make it as realistic as possible.
Why do you need
Hope
blanks at
not
all?
too
Is the next
realistic.
logical? Yeah, why do you need blanks though? Is the next logical question, because like if you want the sound or you want the like gas coming out, that can be done like in post. So
Nowadays, yeah.
why do you need blanks? Is a good
Yeah.
question.
I think nowadays that question has become much more salient because of the fact that the technology is there and it's not as expensive as it used to be, probably. But and that's exactly what one of the articles that I was reading, there was a guy that I think is an armorer, for
Yeah.
other sets and whatnot, that basically said the same thing, that he's like, we really shouldn't be using blanks anymore. That really should be outlawed as well, because they are more dangerous than what they're worth, and they also waste a lot of time, because every time we use one, we lose 30 minutes because we have to do a safety inspection, a safety lesson for everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, we'll see it. I mean, the facts are going to develop in the story, and they're going to develop in ways that are going to change the legal analysis of this. I have very little doubt.
Yeah.
So as we learn more, we'll probably do a part two and revise.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
someone somewhere did a goof, and someone somewhere has some exposure.
Hmm.
We're not quite sure who it is. We're not. I'm not probably not Alec Baldwin, but somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's another super chat. Thanks so much, Mandalore Wise 01. Now, if only we were smart enough to turn this into a gun safety must be taught in schools event like the Dems and gun control. Honestly, I do agree. I think gun safety would be a great thing to teach people. I learned how to handle a gun when I was
Yeah, I mean,
16.
even from the pro gun control perspective, right? Because they're always talking about making things safer, making people better. So, like, why wouldn't you
Right.
want them to be trained so they have some familiarity, so they
Right.
understand what's going on?
Right, because you have a much greater appreciation for the power and the danger of it. When you do have it in your hands and you're firing it at a target downrange and whatnot, and you can feel it. So it's I do agree. I think that we probably do need more people learning how to properly handle one, because it's probably, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm sure that there are tons of cases where people die just because of somebody does not know how to handle one and doesn't understand how to handle one, and they misuse it.
Yeah, we could always chalk it up to misadventure. That's always a fun one, right? Let's check the box for misadventure.
Some would call that involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
anyway,
someone is dead, and that's depressing. And that
yes,
person and that person's family is hurting today,
yes,
and
yes,
you
thank you
know,
for pointing that out.
it's
That is also,
it's depressing. And
yeah,
they just went to work one day to try to earn a living
yeah,
in the industry, and for some reason, through some confluence of events, which may ultimately be no one's fault, although that seems a bit unlikely, but through some
yeah.
confluence of events, they're dead now, and you know, it's like what?
That's always a tragedy.
How do you deal with that? It's like, what? How are you supposed to deal with that? I don't know. How is this? How are
Yeah,
people on the staff and the production company supposed to deal with that? I mean, at
yeah.
some point, I guess everyone goes back to work, but it's got to be hard, right?
Yeah, yeah, and apparently the production company has stopped filming indefinitely for now, at least. They have no plans to resume filming anytime soon.
Not for at least the
So,
reasons that the cops need some time for the criminal investigation. That might take some time.
right, right. So, yeah, and uh, if you're on Instagram, you can check out. It's really sad actually, looking at Halyna Hutchins' Instagram account, because it's like the day before she died. She posted like a video of her on a horse that she was like, like the benefit of being able to shoot a film, out on a ranch or something like that is on your days off, you can just go horseback riding or something. And I was just like, oh, it just seemed so peaceful, and she seemed so happy. And so it's just like, it's really sad. It's really, really sad, because that obviously is something that cannot be taken back, right?
Yeah,
So we have
the
another
law
super
has no
chat.
real remedy for that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Only
all
you
we can do is
know
give you money. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. Or put someone away. That's the only thing that you can really do. Manny Fabani, thank you for your super chat. Problem is, if you want full 100% gun safety, then you'll never get movies like The Matrix or John Woo type stuff. People take risks to make money. I mean, that's true too. Is that it's part of the reason why people take these risks is so that they can have create a movie that is as real, quote unquote, as possible, right? Because it's like, you can think of like the original Star Wars versus the prequels, right?
Hmm.
Episodes 1 through 3 that were like all graphic, all CGI, right? That
Yep.
it's just like it doesn't feel right, because everything is done digitally. So when you
Yep.
have when you have the real live thing that you're filming in person, it feels different. So, but I think that some of this stuff though, there's got to be a way to make that whole situation safer, right?
Maybe it will lead to some sort of reforms in the industry. One can only hope, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I hope so. Anyway, well, on that note, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a very interesting discussion, and yeah, we'll be happy to continue with it when more information comes out. And yeah, that'll be one more super chat. Andy, my brother. Thank you, Andy. We need Buffalo Rider movies again, aka Guy on a Buffalo. Have you seen to end on a light note? You know what, Andy? Thank you. To end on a light note, have you ever seen Guy on a Buffalo?
I have not.
Okay, so on YouTube, you can look it up. It's like four videos of some guy using I think it was like just footage from Buffalo Rider, and they just like took out all of the audio from it and then made a song over it and just made a song about a guy on a buffalo, and it's so random, but it's so funny. I might find it just for kicks and giggles, and maybe link to it in the description after this.
Anything to liven this up, right?
Yeah, yeah, just to make things a little bit, just give us a little bit of levity, right? So anyway, well, that's all I got. Otherwise, if you guys have not already, be sure to check out Uncivil Law on his channel, and on where else can they find you?
Yes, it's uncivillaw.locals.com, which is a
Yes.
newly developing community. So come join and feel and tell us how you want to be and what you want to be, and we'll give you some member benefits. It'll be great.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And yep. And also, you can, of course, like this video if you enjoyed this, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. You can also find me on Twitter and on Locals and Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, that's about it. And we'll see you in the next video.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.